What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Investor Play. So today is going to be a Q&A, stuff that I pulled directly from today all three questions are from my TikTok. Again, I try to reach all my DMs when people ask me questions and stuff like that. Sometimes if I give you a shorter answer, it's because I'm going to do an episode like this and I'm actually going to answer your question a little more in depth than just me responding on text and stuff like that. So again, today it's a Q&A episode. So let's get right into it. Our three questions that we are going to answer today, again, all off my TikTok. The first one is, what house hack? I want to house hack a fourplex, new construction. How much should I be setting aside for repairs and CapEx? So that'll be question number one. Number two is, I have an eviction court date coming up. What should I expect and what does the judge ask for? I think this one came because I just posted a whole eviction series basically, so I'll be able to answer that pretty in depth because I was just there. And then the last one is, my market is too expensive for me. How do I pick a good market to either flip or BRRRR in? So that'll be the third and final question that I answer today. And yeah, let's just start right in the first one. So I want to house hack a new construction fourplex. How much should I be setting aside for repairs and CapEx? Okay, so the general rule of thumb that you're going to see pretty much everybody say is either 5% for repairs or 5 or 10% for CapEx. So again, 5 or 10% for repairs, 5 or 10% for CapEx. Now, this is something that if you're going to buy new construction, I don't think you need to be as aggressive with. I think you should still, now when you're underwriting it to see if the deal is going to pencil out to cash flow, you should still factor in that 5 or 10%. But would I actually be taking 5 or 10% every month out of my cash flow and sticking it in a bank account for CapEx and repairs? Probably not, to be honest, just because it is new construction. A lot of the things are going to be under warranty. I do think you should still, if you don't have a lot of reserves, then yes, I would suggest still doing that. But if you're somebody who already has a big stack of reserves, like this person actually asked me, like, what do I personally do? Personally, I don't put anything aside for CapEx or repairs because my BRRRRs are all newly remodeled, and we always replace the big things, HVAC, roof, the stuff that actually has a high repair bill. But that's not the reason why I don't set aside money for it. It's because I already have a very, 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 very large reserve that I don't touch. That it's one of those things that, I have, substantial amount of money set aside already for, just because I have, $60,000 a month in mortgages that I pay. So like I make sure that I have a lot of money set aside and always in reserves. So I'm not taking, 5 or 10% from each property and sticking in that reserve pile. To be honest, it's all goes to the reserves. Every time I make profit, I don't really touch any of the money. It all goes right back into reinvesting. That's the whole BRRRR method, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So I'm always recycling that money that I'm making. So on top of my cash flow, I'm not taking extra 5 or 10% and setting those aside for repairs. But again, if you are new and you're just now building up your portfolio, yes, I would still put aside 5 or 10% a month for both CapEx and repairs when you're doing it. And the major thing is just to underwrite it that way. Does that mean you physically have to take the money out of there? No, but you should also make sure that that's the underwriting. So many people get caught up in, oh, my mortgage is $2,000, my property rents for $2,400. That means I have $400 in cash flow. No, guys, that is not. That's phantom cash flow. The true cash flow, when you hear people talk about, is they're factoring in 10% for vacancy, 10% repairs, 10% for CapEx, and then your cash flow number is. So when you're underwriting, you should be very scrutinizing of that 5 or 10, that 10% number. Really, you want to shoot for always the high end. And if it pencils out at that, great. And if it's new construction, that just means you're going to cash flow or have a lot more in reserves because you shouldn't be touching that. The only really expenses you should have basically are vacancy or turnover costs. Like if you have people damage the unit or stuff like that. But like all your major things are going to be under warranty. But at the same time, does that mean you're not going to have repairs? No. You'd be surprised. Even a lot of very big brand name builders, I'm not going to say any names, they do not do a great job on their new construction stuff. And they push a lot of stuff off to the warranty, and then the warranty will push it back to the builder, and it just gets caught in this ring. And in the end, you have tenants that are living there. You can't wait for who decides going to pay for it, either the builder or the warranty company. You just need to take care of it. So it comes to a point where you might have to do this because you have people living there. It's not your personal home. You have to provide, say, the HVAC goes out or something like that. You don't have time to sit there and say, oh, well, it's the builder to do it. Oh, they might refund you. You might get your money back, but if you don't have the $3,000-$4,000 set aside for an HVAC system that goes out, and now your tenants are not paying you rent because they're like, dude, our HVAC's been out for a month. It's Texas. It's 100 degrees outside. So I'm not paying you HVAC. Are not paying you rent this month. Like, that's a very probable thing. So it's like, you always should still keep the reserves. And honestly, my suggestion and my experience, if you don't have reserves, you shouldn't be buying real estate. Anytime I see somebody have to force sale or something like that, it's because they got some guru online to listen to that they said they can buy real estate without any money out of pocket, or they learned how to do sub-2 and they were able to sub-2 somebody's house, and for $0 out of pocket, they just took over this property. And then you're really screwing up a lot of people's lives. These are not like toys that you're buying, or it's not a car that can just sit there or something like that. Like, no, this is somebody's house. So if somebody moves into your property and their HVAC goes out and you don't have the money to replace that, like, you should have never been buying real estate to begin with. And that's the very hard truth. And I know I should not be saying that, most people say, because I want everybody to get into real estate. I'm just keeping it real with you when a lot of people aren't. If you don't have reserves, you should not be buying real estate. So you should be saying, well, what should I be doing? You should be saving more money. However you can do it. Is house hacking one of those things? Yes. But maybe you're living in a $2,000 home and you could live in a 1-bedroom apartment and save $500, $600, $700 a month. Oh, but I want a house, I want a yard, I want a dog. Like, okay, well then you don't want real estate then. There has to be sacrifice for you to get it. So if you don't have reserves, honestly, you should just not be buying real estate. You don't buy real estate and then all of a sudden get reserves. Like, those don't happen. You should start out with reserves and then you buy real estate. Obviously, if you're house hacking a new construction place, that would be your best bet, because now you're really slimming down your odds of actually having to come out of pocket, at least for a little while. So you should be able to then build up your reserves. So great choice by the person that messaged me. Yes, I completely agree. A new construction fourplex would be, if you have low reserves, that's your best bet, because you're going to cash flow, you're not going to have a ton of repairs, and at the same time, you're not relying on one tenant to pay your whole mortgage. So say you're living in one and renting 3 out, that gives you 3 other incomes. If one of them leaves, you still have 2 others to hopefully offset some of your mortgage cost. So, all right, next question. I have an eviction court date coming up. What should I expect, and what does the judge ask for? So I'm only going to give you the experience that I've had, and that's in Nueces County in South Texas. Obviously, every county is going to be very, very different. So please do not sit here and come at me like, oh, that was not. This is what happened in our county. I don't know what happened in your county. If you're in New York or California, it's going to be completely different. So I completely agree there. If you're from Cali or New York, you can go ahead and fast forward this part, because it's going to be completely irrelevant to you. So you obviously will go in. The first step is to file the eviction. Well, actually, the first step is you have to serve them with a notice to vacate or pay. And then you have to wait 3 days. On the 4th day, or whatever your paper says, you can go into the county clerk and you can file for the eviction. They'll want to see the notice to vacate. They'll want to make sure that those 3 or 5 days, whatever you gave them, is past that, and then they'll file it. And to be honest, like, people's like, oh, I need the lease, I need that. They don't really go by any of that, to be honest. They've never asked me for a lease. They just ask me how much is his rent or how much is he behind. There's 4 forms that you'll have to fill out. You can get them all online. I always print them out. Well, I'll type them online and then I'll print them out, so that way it's nice, clean, real easy for the girls in the county clerk's office to read. And again, it's just like, who the plaintiff is, who you are, who they are, like, what do they owe, what were the lease dates, do you have a lease, are you evicting them because they're behind on rent, are you evicting them for other reasons or other violations, did you just buy the property? A big thing in Texas is, are they a veteran? Do you have to disclose if they're a veteran, or if you know that they're a veteran? If you don't know that they're a veteran, obviously it is what it is, but there's a whole page on there that you have to fill out where if they have veteran status or not, because obviously Texas is a big, veteran place. So those are the 4 things that you have to fill out beforehand. You'll get given a court date. That person can either show up or not show up. To be honest, every single eviction that I've ever gone to, it doesn't matter if they show up or not. It's always the same thing. The judge asks them, do you have money for rent? Did you pay rent? No. I've had one guy sat there and tried to give some spiel about why he was late on rent, the same reason why. The judge doesn't care. He doesn't care if your brother, sister's cousin, mother's died and you got divorced and your kids are losing you or whatever it is. The judge does not care. He cares about, have you paid your rent? If not, you will get evicted. So there's also other things that they can claim, like the one guy who I most recently evicted, he tried calling like code enforcement on me and saying that the place wasn't habitable and all this other garbage, which obviously wasn't true. But even then, the judge still didn't hear that, didn't care, and he still got evicted. So even if that was the case and it wasn't livable, which obviously it was, that was just his excuse. That's just my example of showing you that the judge really doesn't care what his excuse is. It's very simple. The lease is very simple. You have this long to pay. And guys, write this in your lease. I know every state usually has like a section where you can do like additional comments or whatever. Say on there what day you file the eviction, because you'll have your late fee. Like they always have a spot for like, okay, when's the late fee? And like I always put in mine after the 3rd. But I'll put in the additional comments, evictions are filed on the 10th of non-payment. So that way, if there's ever like, oh, well, I didn't know it was in there. Yes, it's right there in the lease. It says if you don't pay your rent or pay your balance by the 10th, the eviction's getting filed. And that way, if they ever try to, and the reason why you really should do this in general is because the tenant's going to come with you and say, hey, my dog died, this happened, whatever happened, and you just tell them, I have to stay by the lease. And that way, it kind of takes the personal thing out of it. And this is a contract. I could get in trouble for not following the contract, and you just put it on the contract. But that way it keeps everybody in line, on point, and that way there's no issues. So on the actual eviction day, you'll all stand up. Judge asks you to rise. He's whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, whatever. He does the whole court at once, so that way it's just to save time. And then he'll start with this first case, this person versus this person. You come up to the front. It's usually lasts like 30 seconds. He said, do you have anything to say, or what does he owe? He owes X amount of dollars. He'll go to him. Do you have the money? Do you have the rent? Anything else? They're going to try to play their spiel. And then the judge every time has been, okay, I'm siding with this. I'm also adding their court fees to the file. Blah, 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 blah. You have the next portion of it is they have a chance to appeal that, because they always word it like, if you don't like my judgment, you're welcome to hear from a second opinion. Basically, you get a chance to appeal to push to the next, to a different court, to hear from a different judge. But, which is why I love Texas, in New York and stuff like that, you're able to just keep pushing it down the road and everything gets extended and blah, 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 blah. What they make you do is they make you pay a month's worth of rent to be able to go to appeals court. So yes, you can file your appeal. It gives you like 5 or 7 more days or whatever after you get evicted, which you get 5 days anyways to be out. So it really doesn't give them any more time. But it's like they get 5 or 7 days to file an appeal. And if they do file an appeal, they have those same, in that time frame, they have to put up basically like a voucher, almost like a deposit. Like, hey, here's 1 month's rent to the court. They actually give it to the court to hold. So that way they know that these people aren't just wasting their time trying to stay as long as they possibly can for free. They make them actually like produce money, So it's actually really, really smart how they do that, because this last one, he actually did try to do that. But because he didn't have the rent money of 1 month's rent, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, you can still go through with the writ. And then after that, since this person still wouldn't leave, because even if they have to get evicted, nobody's going to their house that day and actually kicking them out. So what happens is they get ordered evicted, a judgment eviction gets put on them, on their record, and then you will agree in a time, or the judge will give them 3 days. You have all your stuff on 3 days, whatever the judge says, or the paperwork, whatever the paperwork says. If they're not out by that time, then you have to file what's called a writ of possession. And that is when the sheriff, or the constable will actually go physically to the property and remove the person. Now, they won't actually physically remove them, like they will, and also all his belongings and everything have to come out at the same time. So always make sure you have like a dumpster there and you have a bunch of guys helping you there, because basically the constables will not leave until all his possessions are on this curb, and they have to be on the city part of the curb off of the property, because he is not allowed on, obviously, back on the property, or that would be trespassing. And then you have to wait 24 hours to throw his stuff out. So everything has to get placed on the curb, and then after 24 hours, you're allowed to throw the belongings out that they leave behind, which was, last time was a bunch. So they actually will stay there until everything gets taken out. And this guy didn't want to move any of his stuff. For some reason, he still thought that he had the rights to stay there. Obviously, that wasn't the case. So the constables removed him. He left. All his stuff was still there. So we had to remove his bed, couch, everything to the corner of the street. And then after 24 hours, he didn't pick up like anything. And then we had to throw it all in the dumpster. So that's pretty much what happens for as far as like, what do you need? I mean, I would bring the lease just to have it, and any like, they'll usually ask for like a balance sheet or a rent roll or something like that showing exactly how you got to their balance amount, because the only time there is like a rebuttal that I've seen is like when somebody says like, no, I made a partial payment. Guys, this is a lesson for you. Do not take partial payments for rent. I put it in my lease as well. No partial payments. Because since they made some type of payment to it, the wires get crossed of like, oh, they were trying to pay it. And like, that is the one time that I've seen there be some kind of wavering, is like when they did pay a portion of the rent, but they still owed like late fees or something like that. That's when the judge was like, actually gave the person like, hey, you have to pay these late fees or whatever, but didn't evict them or whatever. So don't take partial payments, especially for rent and stuff like that. And they want to see a ledger or what they owe or how much they owe or why they owe that much or whatever it is. So you can bring a ledger with you. You can bring the lease with you. It's always a good idea to bring the lease with you just to have it. And also any kind of correspondence you have with the people also will help too. Anytime I'm doing something like this, I try to text it or even email it, because they say text or not by law, whatever it is. So that way you have actual proof that stuff was being said, not just like a hearsay, or you can wear a body camera or something like that and have footage. But that pretty much wraps that one up. So third one, my market is too expensive for me. How to pick a good market to flip in or possibly BRRRR. To be honest, I would not suggest flipping at all at this time in the market. It's one, going into the slow season, which is the holidays, seasonality of real estate. It always slows down in that time. But it is just very much a buyer's market. Does that mean that no flips are selling? No. If they're well priced and well done, they still are selling, at least from what I'm seeing. And if you're in a better market, like say you're in the Northeast, I hear that area is still great, like Buffalo, even from Buffalo, I'm from Buffalo. Buffalo is still a great market. So I'm not going to speak for all markets, but just from, with the high interest rate and low affordability and stuff like that, it's very, very, unless you're in a market that has, you always want to check like things like days on market. What is the average days on market for that area? If it's very low, then that means, hey, the market's still hot. And also look for the list to price ratio. These are some things that you might not be able to get just from Zillow and stuff like that. You probably have to get a little more, get a realtor involved, to get somebody involved who actually has MLS access. List to price ratio, what that is so say the home lists for $100,000, it sells for $98,000. That would be a 98% list to price ratio. So those are actual numbers that you can find. And like during COVID, all the hot markets were selling at like 105, 110, which means they were going for over asking on average in that area. Obviously that provides a very hot market statistics, but there's also the flip side. Like, so a lot of markets right now are 93, 94%, sometimes even lower than that, which means that a lot of homes are being listed and they're not selling for the list price. So those are probably your two key metrics if you're trying to find a flipping market, is going to be, is it low days on market? And also, what is the list to sell price ratio? So those are the two things that you're going to want to find if you flip. Again, guys, I really don't like flipping in this market. I think that buyers just have way too many options right now with the inventory that's out there. They're being super picky. I watch my market every single day. The biggest thing and the first thing I look at every single day is back on market, which means that are homes that were under contract and that fell out of contract. And people are just being picky. It's not COVID anymore where you have to waive all your contingencies and all that crap. Everybody's getting inspections. A lot of people they're seeing one thing, and if the seller doesn't want to fix it, they're backing out because there's 10 other options to go to. Before, you were so worried about, oh, we finally got under contract. You didn't care what came up on that inspection report. Even if you got one, you might try to negotiate, say, hey, will you give us some money off because of this? The person would say no, and you'd have to contemplate, do I want to go try to put multiple offers again to get a house under contract? A lot of times they just ate it and said, no, let's just buy it. I don't want to deal with another going under contract, and some of that are getting beat out by 10 other offers. So I personally do not like flipping in this market or real estate market in general. But like I said, that's not every single subdivision or every single market. Even in cities that are crashing like Houston or Austin or something like that, not crashing, but like having price drops, there's probably still neighborhoods that are having increases. Again, it's just super location specific. Are they well done properties, and are they priced accordingly? If you're going out there trying to say, oh, this flip sold for 100 grand, I'm going to list mine at 110. We're not in that market anymore. Like you have to list realistically when you sell your homes. So again, we'll go over that. Not a big fan of flipping. As far as how to find a BRRRR market, which is funny I got asked this because me and my brother have actually been going through this a lot because we plan to move into Florida and we are trying to pick areas in Florida to BRRRR in. So I'm actually like hands-on doing this right now. So I'm not just answering a question. Like this is actual like things that I'm doing right now to try to find all these things. And I'm doing it through my brother so that way he can learn real estate more, but at the same time, like I need the data as well. So I'm just giving him tips like, hey, this is the stuff you look for. And then once you kind of identify those areas, we'll dig farther into the areas to see if it works as far as cash flow and stuff like that. So the first things I told him we need to look for, obviously, is population growth, low crime rate, a good spread. That's what you're looking for as a BRRRR. You want to find pockets of homes that are in areas where people want to live, rent demand is high, and you want to see a spread, which means you see fixer-uppers on the MLS selling for, just throwing it out there, a random number, they're selling for 150, and you see a remodeled comp on the same street selling for 300 to 350. So that means you have a spread. That's where you can go in, you can get your cash out refinance, and you can kind of do the perfect BRRRR, or whatever you want to call it, where you get, leave no money in the deal. So those are the things that I always try to identify. That's like, then obviously once you find those areas, you even go deeper. You start looking at rental rates. Okay, hey, what is this 3.2 going to rent for? And then you have to figure out what is my payment going to be if the property does appraise for what I think it's going to appraise for at 300. Now I have to run those numbers. Okay, today's interest rates at 300,000. 75% LTV cash out or 80%. This is going to be our loan balance of 250. Our interest rate is this. What are the taxes for this property? What's the insurance for this property? And then what's it going to rent for? So you obviously, because you need to make sure it's going to cash flow after you BRRRR it. So those are the things that once you really pick the market that you're going to try to really nail down. But as far as like where you should start picking markets, like if you're saying like nationwide, hey, where would you go? That part obviously I'm not doing because I know where I want to go. Obviously with Florida, my family's moving to Florida, so I want to start investing there. But if I had like nationwide, you're still kind of looking for those same things. You're still looking for positive population growth. You're still looking for jobs. Are there more jobs coming than there are leaving? There are more people coming than there are leaving. So people follow jobs. So that's pretty simple. Look for where they're building big corporations. If you think about it, those people spend billions and millions of dollars on, research and data to figure out, okay, hey, where can we put our next store? Where are we going to be able to have population? Where are we going to be able to have clientele, customers, all this sort of stuff? So like follow the big chains. Like for example, D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton spends millions of dollars a year researching where they should build new neighborhoods. Does that mean that you should just follow D.R. Horton? No, but that's a good indicator of the areas that they think are going to grow, or they have population growth where they need more homes. Because you wouldn't be a billions of dollars company building if you weren't successful in selling your homes. And obviously they're not going to build somewhere where they need to sell their homes. So now granted, they still have, I've seen this before too, they still have pockets of like homes that are in small towns that I would never buy in, but because they know, hey, but they're not building 1,000 homes. They might build 100 homes, just because they know that there's such low inventory, those 100 homes will get soaked up like nothing. That doesn't mean I want to invest there, but around a big metro or something like that, you can see where, okay, hey, these people are building their homes. It's kind of the same theory as like, look where Starbucks or Chick-fil-A are popping up. they spend millions of dollars, looking up the data of where they're going to make money from customers. So they're not putting Starbucks up, in a town of 40 people. Like, they know the trends of where populations are growing. And if you see 4 Starbucks start popping up near your town, in a small town near you, there's probably a reason why that's happening. So you want to look for those big things like big tech jobs and stuff like that. Where are they spending all their money? Where the data center is getting put? Now, that stuff you need to look a little more in detail, because they might actually be looking for space. They might be looking for people away from people. But at the same time, people usually still need to work there. So it's kind of like a back and forth thing. So picking a good market to BRRRR, again, you want to start with overall population growth. If you're just trying to narrow down like a city, positive population growth, positive job growth, positive infrastructure being built. That's one of the big reasons why I've picked Corpus to invest in, is because I saw the money that they're dumping into downtown and the island, and I think that Corpus is going to be a much bigger city in the next 10 or 15 years. If you look at a place and everything's run down, the city is not being, refunded and invested in again and stuff like that. They have, their taxes are shit. Like, they're not investing any of their money in the infrastructure to grow. That's not a good sign, because that means everything takes 5, 10, 15 years. You think like the interstates and stuff like that were built, I guarantee you when people first saw like the interstates being built, they're like, why the fuck are they building that? Now it's a major interstate, because guess what? They had the research to know, hey, I-10 is going to be massive in 30 years. We need to build this thing to be huge, because it's going to be huge. It's running right through Houston. It needs to be 14 lanes wide. I guarantee you when they were first building that, they were like, this is stupid. Why is this so big? But it's because they knew the population growth was coming. Why do you think everywhere you see cranes and stuff like that all over the big cities in Texas and stuff like that? It's because they know the population growth is going to outpace them unless they continue to keep building. If you think, even if you want to be like, hey, our taxes are crazy high, stop spending our money, you don't have a choice. The people coming here are outpacing the infrastructure that we have. So you can look for things like infrastructure investments and stuff like that, especially on a smaller town level. If you see that a smaller town is really, 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 like a suburb is really starting to grow, that is a great indicator that that is an area you want to be near, because obviously every bigger city is probably gonna have the budget. They'll do a couple things to invest. But like if you have suburbs that are, you see all new commercial buildings going up, because people follow businesses. So if you see businesses starting to form in these outlets like West Katy in Houston, if you're in the Houston area, everywhere you look, it's brand new commercial buildings and brand new homes being built. That area 10 years ago was farmland. And you look at it now and it's just thousands of brand new built homes. Super expensive. But why do you have that? Why? Because they're still just building the infrastructure. They still now are just building roads. Half of them are still being built. But yet you already have Starbucks, Five Guys, and H-E-B already built, because they know the people are going to be there. So those are the things you want to look for as far as over citywide. But then obviously when it comes down to buying the property, you want to really, 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 really tune in and hone in on, is it going to cash flow? Is it in a good area? You don't want to be in an area where nobody wants to rent. You don't want to be in a high crime area. All those things matter when you're buying for a property you're going to keep. Flipping, not so much, because as long as the flipping numbers make sense, you're good to go, because you're not going to keep it as a rental. But I always keep in the back of my head before I buy a property, am I going to want to own this rental 10 years from now? Because if it's going to be shitty tenants or something like that, that's something I didn't do when I started. And my first 3 properties, a 7-plex and 2 duplexes, are my biggest headaches and biggest turnaround, biggest repairs issues that I have. And it was because I just didn't know the area well enough. And I will never buy any properties in those areas ever again. But even no matter how good the numbers were. But that's what I needed to prove concept, that I could do this, and obviously that it ended up working out pretty well. But I can tell you right now, if I was to start again, I would have completely skipped that proof of concept stage. I would have tried to go proof of concept in an area that actually mattered. Because if I would have actually known the area, I would have walked in and known what I know now, I would have looked and said, I don't want to own that property in 10 years, and I never would have bought it. Even if I knew I could make 6 figures or whatever on it, on a flip or a BRRRR, I still never would have bought it. So those are the things you got to look out for. But thanks for listening along, guys. If you made this far, make sure you hit like and subscribe, please. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Again, I love answering these questions, guys. shoot me in the comment section or the DMs the questions, and I'll try to do, like once a month, I'll try to do these Q&As and stuff like that. And whatever question gets asked the most, I'll usually will bring up an answer. So thanks for following along, guys. I'll catch y'all around.